I'm delighted to be back here at my alma mater. I was a medical student at UCL. I was then a professor. I set up the Institute for Women's Health here. I was the first director of the Biomedical Research Centre, and then I was Dean of Biomedicine until 2011. So it's fantastic for me to be back here from London to Sydney via Manchester, to be back here as the Vice-Chancellor and President of UNSW Sydney, a world top 100 university. We have 55,000 students. That would make any Vice-Chancellor in the UK nervous. 6,000 staff, great infrastructure, great people in a wonderful location in one of the most beautiful cities in the world. So thank you very much for having us here today. The topic of this session, as Laurie said, and Simon very eloquently introduced, is strategic challenges for university leaders in a more contested global and national space. And when I was preparing for this, I went back to a TED talk that I gave at the end of last year, and forgive me if you heard that, because I will repeat some of the things I said there. And I noticed that I started it, and it seems even more relevant now, by noting that Barack Obama, in an interview last year, before the US election, said that in many ways, if you had to choose a moment in human history to live, you would almost certainly choose right now. And overall, that's true. The world is wealthier, it's healthier, it's better educated, it is less violent, it's more tolerant, although it may not always seem like that, and it's more attentive to the vulnerable than ever. But, sadly, it's also beset with massive problems. And some of those problems are much more significant in the long term than our current obsession with Brexit and Trump. War, famine, oppression, economic disparity, bigotry, xenophobia, prejudice, climate change, and mass migration. They are really major issues, and these, in that context, are seriously worrying times. And why bother saying all that? Well, I'm saying all that because I'm convinced that universities across the world have a critical role to play in resolving these challenges. And here we are in one of the truly great universities of the world, and there are many other universities that really can rise to this and be central to the future of humanity. If we're going to do that, our universities have to change the way they see their role. And many are already doing it. They need to be prepared to serve society, both locally, regionally, nationally, and globally, not as ivory towers. The overarching ethos must be to drive everything we do and all the decisions we make with that in mind. If we can get that right, the great universities of the world that act to serve their society and the global community can really be key in shaping a positive future and rising to those challenges. So I'm going to spend the rest of my 5, 6, or 7 minutes, depending on how indulgent the Laurie is, focused on 3 areas where universities can make this difference and what we need to do to make sure that that happens. And the first one is about delivering the full power of discovery and invention. I'm sure everyone here would agree that universities are powerhouses where great minds come together to generate and develop ideas that importantly, become applications that then save lives and improve quality of life. And one example from my own area of women's health, the discovery of the cause of cancer of the cervix, a disease affecting over 500,000 women a year, the human papillomavirus. That's the outcome of some extraordinary research in universities, in epidemiology and biology over many years, the understanding of the 15-year natural history of this cancer, the development then of a screening test to prevent it, and now a vaccine that can prevent the infection and prevent cancer. That's an extraordinary example of academic success, importantly, in partnership with healthcare providers and with industry. And we could talk endlessly about others. Penicillin, oral contraception, the seatbelt, the computer, perhaps 2 areas that UNSW is particularly involved in, photovoltaics and solar energy and quantum computing. None of that, and much more, could happen without the research infrastructure and the economic backing of universities. Discovery, invention, innovation. That's one of our key jobs. Outstanding research really does build social progress, and it brings great economic benefits. So research funding is not, as some governments at the moment like to characterize it, a charitable donation. It's an investment that yields immense social return and an economic return of at least 15% per annum, and there's plenty of evidence to support that. To harness the full potential, we need to ensure that there is greater investment in research. We need to convince governments of the importance, of the fundamental importance of research and of the vital importance of fundamental research. And that's no easy task when everyone is fixated on national deficits, and that's something I'll come back to. We know that great research can help solve the deficit challenge. A report we commissioned from Deloitte in Australia showed that UNSW Sydney alone contributed $15 billion to Australian GDP in 2014 through the research that we pushed out into society, and that Australian universities in total contributed $160 billion. That is 10% of Australia's GDP, and we can do even more if we have the right investment in our research. So research really is an investment in future prosperity. The second thing I want to talk about, the second way in which universities can address the big challenges, is by responding to the need and demand for higher education and delivering the impact of higher education on individual lives on a truly grand and global scale. People just about everywhere understand how much difference a good education makes to the quality of individuals' lives, to the opportunities they have, and their ability to contribute to society. OECD data, which you'll be familiar with, suggests that adults with higher qualifications are more likely to report good health, participation in volunteer activities, and interpersonal trust, and that's regardless of gender, age, and earnings. So not surprisingly, it doesn't matter where you go in the world, demand for higher education is exploding. At UNSW, we're exploring partnerships, just as one example, in India, and it's great to see Raj Kumar here, Vice-Chancellor in India. India wants to achieve a higher education participation rate of 30% by 2020, up from 18% now. Do the maths, that means they'll have to find places for an additional 2 million students every year. Globally, participation rates in secondary education are now, across the world, about 14%. They're projected to reach 25% by 2025, and 40%, I actually think it'll be higher than that, but at least 40% by the end of the century. That means an extra 2 billion participants in higher education. So if you're in higher education, it's a pretty good industry to be in, and it's crucially important. The established universities have to rise to that challenge, and we have to facilitate it and not remain outside it. We need to transform the way our universities view and approach education. We're in an age where education really can now be made available to everyone who wants it. And that's not mediocre education. It's outstanding education, delivered with cutting-edge digital technologies, enhanced by skillful use of personal interaction with students, mentors, and academics. So we need to use new digital technologies to remove the barriers to higher education on a truly global scale. And universities must help in transforming societies, not just their own, but across the global community. And for that to happen, we also need a transformation in the respect, prestige, and reward we offer to teachers. For too long, teaching in universities, and I include my own university, UNSW Sydney, and I certainly include UCL, which I know very well, and Mick Arthur has said this. For too long, teaching in universities has been treated as secondary to research, and that has to change. We need our universities to value, respect, reward, and promote great teachers equally to great researchers. And we need universities to be both research-intensive and teaching-intensive. Great teachers inspire students, shape their future lives and careers. The world needs a new generation of teachers, who are able to deliver higher education using new technologies in individualised and personalised ways to the millions who want and need it. And the more people who can access higher education, the better off the world will be in the 21st century. To achieve that requires a different approach to the funding model for higher education. Everyone wants it. No one wants to pay for it. The students don't want to pay, the government doesn't want to pay, the taxpayer doesn't want to pay. Governments are focused on the fiscal deficit. Because of that, they attack universities for unwisely for being inefficient. They attack universities for paying staff too much, especially vice-chancellors. We need a new model of higher education funding which looks not just at the immediate direct costs, but the long-term benefit. The Deloitte report I referred to earlier indicated that Australian universities contribute $140 billion per annum to Australian GDP through the knowledge and expertise of the workforce they produce. These are incredible numbers. If you model higher education funding in that context, it brings a very different sense to the overall economic value. Over and above that, we need to rise to the challenge of delivering higher education to many, many millions in less advantaged nations. And that's going to require novel ways of using digital technology to reach students across the world with innovative approaches to ensure the key component of personal interaction between students, teachers, and mentors is maintained. Now, I believe that all of that can be achieved, but it will require very different attitudes and approaches, which I'm sure others will comment on later today in this meeting. There's one other area that I want to comment on before I stop, and that's the third contribution that universities can make through their key role in protecting freedom of expression, the integrity of ideas, and in promoting equality of opportunity. Our universities, and UCL is a paradigm in this context, were created on principles of independent thinking and freedom of academic expression, and we need to defend those values at any price. Over the centuries, many academics have paid a truly heavy price to uphold the right to express new radical and anti-establishment ideas, and that's a legacy that all of us at UCL, UNSW, and other great universities have a responsibility to uphold. Today's universities must be role models, displaying transparency and openness, encouraging freedom of thought, upholding the individual's right to express opposing and often uncomfortable views. The importance of independent thought and expression, in many ways, has never been more important and potentially under threat than it currently is in a globally connected digital world. We need to have robust protection of the independence of universities, academic independence, and freedom of academic expression, regardless of gender, religion, ethnicity, or race. And those are not just lofty ideals. They're essential ingredients for a successful democratic society. Universities need to be both exemplars and key defenders of basic human values. So those are three reasons that I believe universities are going to become even more critical to our lives as the 21st century unfolds. There's one other ingredient that's crucially important, and that is partnership. A real commitment to partnership. Partnership across the globe. UNSW is a member of several university groupings of 10 to 50 partners via APRU, U21 and Global Tech, and they're important for debate and exchange of staff and students and discussion. We are also, importantly, part of two other really important partnerships which are for action as well as discussion. We have an alliance locally in New South Wales, the New Alliance, NUW. The University of Newcastle's the N, UNSW is the U, and Wollongong is the W, and that is all about thinking about what three great universities in a region can do for their local society. And we have a global alliance, the Plus Alliance. The P for Phoenix, Arizona State University, the L for London, King's College London, and the S for UNSW Sydney. And that's aiming to deliver mass-scale, high-quality education in both advantaged and disadvantaged regions in the world, and to add value to our research capacity going beyond what each individual university can deliver on its own. And that has to extend to areas which desperately need the benefits of higher education Through our Institute of Global Development at UNSW, we're working in the Pacific Islands, in Myanmar, and in Uganda. Uganda is a place that I'm personally particularly passionate about, where we have a partnership in the north of Uganda, which has been devastated by civil war, with Gulu University. And all of that requires a genuine commitment to generosity in partnership. And it's the generosity in partnership which I believe is the most crucial thing. I've rarely ever seen, if people or organizations are committed to partnership with generosity, in the long term, you get back much more than you put in. So in summary, the challenges globally are enormous, but universities do have unique potential to help make the world a better place. If collectively we can get this right and ensure that the leading universities are able to conduct great research, transformative education on a global scale, to translate their work into social and economic progress, all whilst treasuring freedom of thought expression and social tolerance, universities will be central to human progress and quality of life as we face the challenges of the 21st century. It's my belief that the great universities of the 21st century will be those that rise to those challenges by acting in absolutely everything that they do to serve their society and the global community. Thank you.